Now everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name's Jamie from Jcprojects, and today I'll be showing you how I made this stylish looking dog bed for my dog Lucy's 5th birthday by only using the materials and the limited tools that I currently have in my garage. The main focus of this build is we can learn together how to join boards using biscuits, using a biscuit router cutter and a handheld router, and how to cut compound mitre cuts using a single tilt mitre saw. So come with me in the garage and let's crack on. So where we're going to start is I need to join these 3 boards up, and I need to make one complete panel. So we're going to be joining these together using biscuit joints. Actually glue and fix these pieces together. I need to determine where the outside biscuit needs to go. If I put this too close to the edge, then we run the risk of, when we're cutting this compound mitre cut, actually cutting through the biscuit and exposing it on the end. Wouldn't be seen too much because obviously we've got a mitre cut here, so the actual mitre will cover itself, but I still don't want to cut through that biscuit because we're actually relying on that to keep these boards aligned. I want to work out where I need these compound mitre cuts to go here, and that can determine where biscuits are going to go. So this is how I worked out where I need the compound mitre cuts to be. I first marked the centre of the length of each board. The cushion that I'll be using for the dog bed measures 60 centimetres by 60 centimetres. That will be sat on a piece of plywood. The size of the cushion determines how long you need the whole panel to be. So from my centre mark, I measured 30 centimetres away and made a mark. I then marked the height of the bottom curve. I then need a dado for that plywood to sit in. I measured 30mm from the bottom to the start of my dado. I transferred that 30mm mark over to the 30 centimetre mark that we made for the plywood. I then grabbed my bevel gauge, which I set to 10 degrees. Put the bevel gauge on the top of the panel, lined it up to this cross that we had here with our 30 centimetre mark and our 30mm mark from the bottom, and then drew a line. This shows the outside of that compound mitre cut, so you can visually see where you can place your last biscuit so it's not too close to that mitre cut. Now I'm going to do those same measurements on the other side of the board, and then I can mark where all my biscuits need to be. So for the outside biscuits, I'm going to come 3 inches away from this line here. There'll be one there, one in the middle, and then 3 inches from this left hand side mitre cut here. Then used a scrap piece to determine the height of the bit. I've marked dead centre of the thickness of the timber, then just lined the cutter bit so the centre of the cutter lines up with the centre of that line. So now with all the biscuit slots cut, we can glue these 3 boards together. The reason that I've got these chrome bars on my table here is my craft table, which I'm temporarily using as a workbench for now, has got a slight dip both ways. These chrome legs come off a old desk. They are perfectly straight. So with the 3 of them there and these boards going across this way, by gluing onto top of these chrome legs here, it ensures that I get the 3 boards perfectly aligned. The biscuits will help me to align as well, and then I can reference from the straightness of the chrome legs that the boards remain flat. So I've left the panels in the clamps overnight, so now we're ready to cut the dado on the inside of each panel. So this is the setup I'm going to be using to cut those dados. I did a similar setup on the switch station that I built. If you'd like to go and see that video, I'll leave a link down in the description. So straight edge screw to your workbench. If you've got a long enough straight edge, then you could clamp it so your clamps are actually out the way if you don't want to be screwing to your workbench. Then I've got a nice straight edge clamped to that. I've screwed another board this side of the workbench, which is just wider than the panel that we are going to be cutting into. So you can see just a little gap there. I've cut a couple of wedges, and this is what's going to hold this in place. This way, the only clamps you're using are these two, so nothing's in your way and you've got a nice flat area to work with. I'm going to put one wedge, just a couple of taps, and just make sure it's flat against your board here. So probably the best way to do that is hold that down flat, a couple of taps, then that is, again, that is solid as well. I'm using my trim router again for cutting this. So I made a mark where I want the cut, lined that up, set my depth that I want, clamp this side, same over here, made another mark, lined that up, clamp that down, and that's perfectly straight to the workpiece that we're going to be using here. You can run that through on all 4 pieces. So once you cut that dado, just tap your wedges out of the way, and then you can move to the next panel, and then just repeat that process until you got through all 4. Then you can move the fence along to just keep hogging out the dados here. If you've got a wide enough bit, obviously you can do this in one pass. Just double check the speed setting that you need to set your router to. So I can now make the compound mitre cuts. I'm going to make the cuts on one end on all 4 panels first. So the way I've got this set up is I've got my saw leaned over to the 45 degrees, and I've got the bed of the mitre saw swung to the 10 degrees that I want the mitre cut in here. So 45, 10 degrees, and importantly as well, I've got the dado nearest towards me. So now I've got all those compound mitre cuts cut on one end on every single panel. I can now mark the length of the inside of each panel that I need it to be. So I do know that the plywood for my cushion, like I say, is 60 centimetres long. So you have to just go work off the size of your cushion to get this length here now. So I've gone from the shortest point here of this mitre, measured 60 centimetres along here, then made a mark. Then with your bevel gauge set to the same 10-degree angle on this side, line up with the top, line it up until it meets that 60 centimetre mark, and then strike that line. So that line you've drawn there is imagine this is the inside of the box now. So this is the area that we want to be the length of your cushion. So if on your mitre saw you are able to swing the saw the opposite way, you can simply now keep the bed of your saw swung to this side at the 10 degrees. So you can simply transfer the saw over, lean the saw over this way, and then make that 45 there, because that will be your shortest point, and then we're cutting away, leaving the longest point on the face side is on the underneath. If your saw is similar to mine, the way I've got round that is I then flip the piece over, work from this mark here, make a really small mark there to indicate that's my shortest point, and then I've made a mark here which is going the opposite angle to the one we've made that side, so I know which way that needs to be. As I lay that down now, and it's hard to see on the camera, but I can see I need the mark there, so I need a 45-degree cut to match to there. So I'll just keep taking short passes until I get to that point, and then I'll make a full cut through. Okay, so I'm now ready to mark the curve at the bottom of each panel. You can skip this process for yours if you want, if you don't wish to have a curve at the bottom. I would recommend, however, at least having one curve at the front of the dog bed, so the side of the bed that your dog is going to get in and out of, so it's a little bit easier for him to get in and out of. But for mine, I'm going to put a curve on the bottom, and what I've marked out is I've come in roughly, say about 75mm, 3 inches either side, so it has, like, say, little feet for it to sit on, and then start the curve from there. So I've made my marks on here, worked out the height that I want my curve to be and where I want them to finish. We also still have the perfect centre that we marked on the length of these boards earlier on in the project. And then from that I made this really simple jig so I can draw that curve on all 4 pieces. Alternatively, you could clamp the piece in place like so, and then if you've got a flush trim bit with a top bearing, you could then clamp this to your workpiece, to your workbench, and then you could run that bearing along there and it will cut the perfect curve on all 4 pieces. I've not got one of those bits, so I'm just going to put this in place. I've marked a centre line on my jig, line it up with the centre line of my workpiece, just hold it in place and then just draw the curve. So now I've got the bed just temporarily held together with a band clamp, so now I can get a nice accurate measurement between the 2 dados side to side. So you don't want to cut this too tight, so that measurement is just a hair over 61 centimetres or about 2 foot, and we should have done everything correct. Same this way, which we have. It's about 613 mil, so I'm going to cut it at that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut just a piece of timber at 613 mil and actually test it in there. You can tickle a little bit off, so instead of cutting your piece of plywood first and it being too tight and then you're wrestling with the band clamps, you can cut just a piece of timber, try it in there, see how tight it is. You want about a sort of mil either side so it's not too tight, and then you know that's the perfect size to make the plywood piece. So this is a scrap piece that I've cut. I've just taken the corners off on the opposing corners either side because this is just a little bit too wide just to swing in like this. So that just allows you to do that. When I first cut this to length, which I thought was the actual measurement I needed, it was slightly too long. So I've just been tickling ever so slightly a mil off either side, and that's got a little bit of room there so it's not too tight when we eventually come to clamp this together. So now I can use this measurement here to cut the piece of ply. So now that I've had the bed just dry assembled, I kind of got a rough idea of how far down I want to come with this top curve. I've just simply used the same template as I did with the bottom, line that centre mark up, gone flush with the top of the panel here, and it's quite hard to see on camera, but I think that looks about right for me, so I'm going to do that on the front. I originally was going to do this matching curve on all 4 sides, but I think it's going to look a bit too much, so I'm going to do the double curve on the front panel and just have the bottom curve on the other 3. So I'm ready to assemble this thing. The way that I want to do it is by using 2 band clamps, or picture frame clamps as they are also known. I don't get on very well with them, and I'm going to try and use 2 here with the compound mitre cuts. So it kind of held itself together as I had it dry assembled earlier, but then hopefully I can use that one at the bottom, the second one towards the top, and I hope that'll pull it in tight enough and I can get all the 45s perfect. If not, then I will put a couple of 18 gauge brads in each corner just to help me hold it in place. So this is the first time I've ever done a glue up like this, so let's see how it goes. Change of plan. I think what I'm going to try and do is glue the front, one side and the back in this U shape first, then I can run some glue along this dado and then I'll try and slide the piece of ply in then, and then I can attach this side at the end. I'm going to have to concede, and I'm going to have to put brads in each corner. It's more the plywood itself. It's ever so slightly thicker in certain areas than it is in others. So like this piece here, it's nice and easy to get in, but it's slightly thicker here and thicker there. So lesson learned for next time, use better plywood, but this is what I had, so this is what we've got to get over. Wow, that was stressful. The main problem I had, plywood was slightly swollen in this corner, and I did find another bit here. So I had to just took it apart, just chiseled out that swollen bit here, and then eventually it actually allowed me to get it all together. So I've got the one clamp at the bottom, but unfortunately I've had to put some brad nails in. But what I'm going to do now is just double check that it is square, which according to me squares it is, which is good. So I'll just let the glue go off overnight, and then I'm going to put some dowels in each corner tomorrow. So it's the next day. Let's see how this thing is settled overnight. Going to make my own wood filler using the sawdust that came from cutting these pieces and some wood glue. So that's it. I think it's fair to say that Lucy approves of the bed. I'm really happy with how this came out, so you'll do. I haven't added a finish to the project yet, as me and my wife are undecided on whether we're just going to put some kind of finish on here or paint it a similar colour that we currently have in our living room. So 3 learning points that I got from this build were: this is my first time cutting and joining boards using biscuits, and honestly it was really easy. I found taking your time with the setup is key here for really good results. Secondly, I have a lot of experience using a mitre saw, and I wanted to show you guys who may only have a single tilt mitre saw like mine, the method I use to transfer your measurements onto the opposing face of your board for a nice, simple and accurate cut. And lastly, the glue up. I clearly still have a lot to learn when it comes to the glue up. As I said in the video, I don't have a lot of experience on gluing parts together on smaller projects like this. I think what I should have done is dry assembled all the parts first and then glued everything together. That way I would have noticed the problems and been able to deal with them. But it's another learning curve. So that's it for this project. Let me know what you think about the methods that I used within the project. Would you have done anything differently, or you like the methods that I used, or you've never seen them before? Please let me know down in the comments below. Any feedback is good feedback. Thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next project.